Hello, everybody, and happy Sunday. My name's Carolee, and you're watching Conversations with a Vet. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to start off, for those of you who have been with me for a while, I know we've talked a little bit about Mind Overland and what they do. So this Veterans Day weekend, starting on the 7th at 3 p.m. through the 9th of November, they are going to be at the Linville Adventure Pasture in North Carolina. This will be their second annual event for veterans. And this time it's going to be, of course, with their families. Veteran families are allowed, as well as veteran supporters. So it is free, but you do need to go out to their website, mindoverland.org. It'll be purchase tickets, but the tickets are free. It's just so that they can keep account of how many people they're expecting, because they will be bringing in food trucks and things of that nature. So they are going to be taking the annual Veterans Day event to those mountains in North Carolina. They're going to be camping starting Friday night, with then a series of 4 trails that they're going to start running Saturday morning. And that is, they're going to have the Brown Mountain, the Wilson's Creek, and Charlie's Creek trails, and those are quite fun. So if you like overlanding, this event is for you. This is the only event that they do where family and supporters of veterans are allowed. And we went the first time, and it was an absolute blast. It was great meeting all the veterans from all different branches. So an amazing time for veterans to come together and, bond over a bonfire. So additionally, a big shout out to James Blackwell. He has sent me his second book. And when we hit our 1,000 mark subscribers, we're going to be giving these away. So his second book is called Gunners, and it is the B-29 machine gunners in the Korean War. So these are now out there to purchase. You can go to his website, and it is jamesblackwellauthor.com. You can purchase from there. Also, I learned today that now there is an audiobook. So again, give James Blackwell some love for his newest book, Gunners, B-29 Machine Gunners in the Korean War. He's put a lot of effort into that as a historian. So, and then also another shout out to Frank DeMith. His second book in a series of what he's hoping to be will be 7, Defending the Eagle. So this is a fictional book. This is book number 2. You can go out there to Amazon and get this book from there as well. Great read. I'm like, I want the next one now. And he just finished this one. So, I'm a little impatient, but a great writer, both of them. So go out and check those out when you have a moment, and give them both some love. So I have a great guest waiting in the wings very patiently. So please help me welcome my guest, Jake Hollenbeck.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey Carolee, thank you for having me on here.
Absolutely. How are you doing this afternoon, or evening, I guess I should say?
Yeah, living the dream out here in the middle of Kansas, Nothing like a Sunday, right? We got Chiefs playing football, got family hanging out together, and excited to be able to take a minute and hang out and chit-chat a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that Chiefs game. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting, to say the
Finally
least.
coming back around, hopefully.
Yeah. So some people that out in, or at least one that you're aware of, is out in the chats. Angry Sarge says, not from State Farm. Not.
I quit wearing red polos because of that.
I'm sure. So I want to thank you right up front and say thank you very much for your service and your sacrifice, and for taking the time to come on the channel and tell your story. So thank you for that.
Carolee, when people like to say that, my first response is it was an absolute honor to be able to serve. I know not a lot of people actually, put their name on the line and do it, but I was honored to be able to take the chance and learn a lot and serve my country. So thank you for the appreciation, but believe me, it was my honor.
Wonderful. Well, I like to start my shows by asking a little bit about my guest. So if you would tell me, who was Jake as a child?
As a kid, yeah, so definitely rambunctious. I grew up in southwestern South Dakota, just outside of the Black Hills. Grew up on an ag operation. I did a lot of cattle ranching. Went to a tiny high school. Shout out to Edgemont, South Dakota. Graduated with like 11 other kids, so it was itty bitty, and so super rural South Dakota. But yeah, that was kind of my passion, was just being a rambunctious young man. Always getting into trouble and riding BMX bikes and breaking bones and playing every
Yeah.
sport I could, and pretty standard ag kid experience in my opinion.
What was your favorite sport?
Football, without a doubt. Yeah, I
Okay.
love playing football.
Nice. And so you've already gotten the athleticism down. So what was it that made you decide you wanted to join the military, and specifically the branch that you chose?
So I was the first of my generation to join back into the armed services. Both my grandfathers were in, but my dad and none of my uncles had. And that service inspired me. I know both of my grandfathers, learned a lot and saw a lot. But I was also a GWAT kid. I was in fifth or sixth grade when I went to school one morning and saw two planes crash into towers. And that stuck with me pretty hard. I was going to school right outside of Ellsworth Air Force Base. So the amount of activity around me when that happened spiked radically, right? The world changed a lot, and that carried with me for the next 4 or 5 years. I saw a lot of people leave and join. I wanted to be a part of that, and I'm a diehard patriot. I love this country, and I did as a little kid. Even that was a big part of being in rural America and wanting that experience and seeing what was happening to our country pushed me a lot. So after that, it was pretty clear to me that that's what I wanted to do when I left high school. That
Yeah.
matter of fact, I left for basic training like a week after I graduated.
Oh, wow. So did you have the conversation? I'm assuming you had the conversation with your parents. And how
Yeah.
did that go with your mom?
So one of the unique things about being in a small school is you're involved in everything. I was in the marching band, I was in the choir, I was in student council. I did all the plays, I did science fairs. Among all the sports, you're just automatically involved in everything when you're in a tiny school. So mom obviously saw a lot of talent outside of a military application. And she warned me of that. She said, college is a lot safer. You're a lot closer to home. You still get to go see things outside of our home, but you won't be a long ways away from me. And that makes me scared. And I told her it was kind of, it was a calling, right? I felt like I had to, and I had to explain that to her, that even as an 18-year-old, that calling hit really hard. I felt like it was something I had to do before I wanted to come out and participate in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and there's others obviously all over that have that same calling. And, I mean, people join for different reasons. But the fact is, it's a volunteer thing at this stage, right?
Yeah.
And so for every person who has volunteered to join and put their life on the line for this country is something that is very unique, specific to this country. So, again, huge gratitude. So, tell me what it was like. So you said a week after you graduate, you go into basic training. What was going through your mind, if you can think back that far, when you first get there, like on the bus and right there at basic training?
Yeah. So it's kind of layered because, I came from a pretty intense, when it comes to morals and discipline, I came from a pretty intense household. And even being on the bus, you have to go to MEPS, right? Military entrance processing. And my last trip to MEPS, after everything had cleared out and I knew I was going to get on a plane and go somewhere, MEPS for kids in South Dakota is Sioux Falls. So it's a 6-hour trek across the state for me. It was the complete opposite side of the state. So I had a lot of time to sit in my car with just me and my recruiter all the way over there. And he's just trying to give me the best info he can, keep me, level headed and keep the idea running of what you're about to see and what you're about to experience. So I feel like I had some really good tips going into it, but I was still an 18-year-old kid. I was scared of leaving home. This was like my first big away from mom and dad and the family forever. So all that nervousness and all that energy is built into that experience. But getting off the plane in St. Louis and getting on a bus to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where by the time you get there, it is pitch black at night, and this really angry dude with a brown hat gets on the bus and is like, "You have 30 seconds to get all your stuff and get out of here." It was a wild experience, but because of where I came from, I had a pretty good alignment for pressure. So it was definitely enough to get the blood pumping, but I wasn't like scrambling. I wasn't super scared. I didn't regret anything because I knew it would be intense. But it certainly, I could feel the intensity as soon as that in processing drill sergeant got on the bus and said it was time to go. Yeah. So that was like the overall feeling of what it was like in that first 1 minute, Yeah. I remember it specifically. It's funny you said, like if you can remember, I don't think anyone really forgets. I think it's like one of those super unique things that it sticks with you forever. I could give you a top to bottom on everything that happened, in my first year and a half in the Army.
Well, that's good news, which takes me into my next question for you. So basic training, funny stories. What do you got for us?
Funny stories. So I like to tell people there were 2 guys in my platoon. One was Private Bean, and it was funny because Bean was like just like the Mr. Bean character. I mean, just like as goofy as you could get, just doing things completely weird but getting the right result all the time. And then also in my platoon, we had a Private Gump as well, just like Forrest Gump.
No way.
Yeah. So like, people want to call me out on that all the time, but I always have to like pull up Facebook and be like, no, there's Bean right there, and there's Gump right there. Gump actually ended up being like one of my really good buddies all the way through my career. He ended up going to be a combat diver, so wow. Without jumping too far ahead, I ended up going to EOD school. That's what I initially had joined for. And I made it through Army EOD in Alabama. And then everyone in the service has to go through NAV school EOD in Florida at Eglin Air Force Base. Well, Army Dive School is actually just south of there at Panama City Beach. So like almost 2 years later, I ended up seeing him down at Panama City for spring break while we were both stationed in Florida. So it was a long kind of wraparound, but yeah, that's kind of one of the funniest things about our entire experience was I went through basic training with Private Bean and Private Gump.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there who could say that. Oh, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Because now I have this picture in my head. Right?
Yeah, completely opposite dudes too. I mean, my Private Gump, that dude was crazy hard. I mean, like he was hardcore buzz cut, not like whatever you tell me to, drill sergeant. Like he wasn't that guy. He was actually very aggressive, and he rolled pretty hard. He was a really good dude.
That's awesome. So in basic training, what was the most difficult part for you?
Uniformity of standards was really hard for me. And what I mean by that is we need everybody to be on the same page. So if you're pretty high speed, you have to slow down, and you have to be able to bring yourself down a couple notches to make sure that everybody else who's trying to catch up, meshing those standards together, and kind of the group punishment kind of mentality where if one messes up, you all mess up. That was hard for me. I played team sports my whole life, but I was a leader in those sports. So it was really easy for me to find, the bottom of the chain and be like, hey, here's what's happening. We need to be able to bring this up. You can go do that in the Army, but the kids that I played sports with, I had known for years, right?
Right.
I had known these guys for days or weeks. So it was really hard to step up and be a leader because everybody's hungry there in that environment, and when you find the person that's, that wasn't ready, that and ended up, everybody graduated and that was all good. I'm not throwing shade at my fellow soldiers. But it was definitely one of those deals where, if you were unprepared, it takes a long time to adjust. The lack of sleep, the amount of physical effort you got to go through, the food you got to eat, all those things. There were a lot of people that didn't understand that, soldering isn't easy, right? So, being able to kind of bring those standards up, that was the hardest part for me. It was really, and that's where a lot of the respect came in for our drill sergeants was, those guys do that like every 3 months. It's a whole new batch of like, here's a new breath, we got to bring them back in. Here's a new breath, we got to bring them back in. So a lot of respect for those guys to do that. But that was without a doubt probably the most I struggled, was just being able to capitulate to the ones that weren't ready and still try and maintain those standards for the ones that you're competing with at the same time.
Right. Right. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and the biggest thing, they try and really push into you is accountability, right? And how do you do that? But do it as a team effort so that you're not leaving anybody behind in the whole scheme of things. So
even to this day, being out of the Army for years now and being on all sorts of different teams and doing different things, that was the quickest I've ever become part of a team, to break everybody's standards down to zero and say, hey, we're all going to build from here and go back up. There's no specialists coming in. There's no like immediately, hey, you're coming in as an E5. That doesn't exist, right? Like not really. So it was a pretty special thing to be able to be a part of a team that grew together that fast, still to this day. You'll hear most vets say like, what do I miss the most? It's camaraderie, right? The brotherhood.
Yep.
That's why, it's a very high paced environment to constantly build together and make standards happen quickly. So still to this day, haven't seen it. And the company I work for now is almost as close as it gets. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that soon.
Yeah.
So you graduate basic. Your family was there?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And what was the look on your mom's face?
Shock, but also a little bit of awe, a little bit. During the ceremony, we're kind of in like this large auditorium. Mm-hmm. And when they call your name out for graduation, you break formation and come to the front and state your rank and your name and where you're from. Okay. And, being an H, last name H, I was halfway through kind of the pool of people that were graduating. And when I broke rank and ran out to the front of the stage and stood at attention and screamed out, Private Hollenbeck from Edgemont, South Dakota. My mom and dad were out there, and my dad, being grown up as a cowboy guy, gave one of those big loud cowboy whistles and like, woo, and that was like the loudest part of the auditorium through the whole experience. And that's what I remember the most, was knowing like, even before we got to break formation and go hang out and have family day, right? I knew they were proud at that moment right there when they were the loudest ones in the room. And so that made me pretty happy. But mom, she's already emotional, right? Like all the time, even for little things. So
we tend to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. Yeah. Because, it's hard enough, right? When you've got to say, say, see you later for an extended period of time. And then you don't really get to hear from them during that time. And you're like, are they okay? Are they eating right? Are they sick? Do they need, and it's just the wheels in our heads go to the worst possible thing that could happen.
Oh, for sure.
So I definitely get that. So you graduate, where do you go next?
Yeah. So like I said, when I originally enlisted, it was my intention to be an EOD tech. So, there's a lot of steps in that process that are a little bit outside of the norm for like most kind of a lot of the people I was going with to basic training with were kind of like multi-role there were Seaburn people in there, there were analysts in there, there were all kind of sorts of different, as long as you're not like a one station unit training, there's MOSs like that, like infantry or MP, what they'll do is they'll go to basic training, do their graduation basic training, and then stay at the same post with the same drill instructors and go for another 12 weeks to do their designated specialty. I went to kind of like a general basic training where everybody's going to basic training, and then when basic training's over, they go to somewhere else for AIT, advanced individual training.
Yeah.
So while I was there, writing back and forth between friends and family and stuff, I would get a letter like halfway through, like, you had to get a pretty decent security clearance to be able to be an EOD tech. And that was a big part of me joining, was I knew that would help me advance not only my military career, but outside the military as well. So I'd be getting letters from home like, hey, the guy in a suit was asking about you, which is super strange for this tiny town in South Dakota. They're like, what are you doing? So there was a lot of that. And then there was a physical fitness test that you have to do in basic training specific for EOD. So while I was at Fort Leonard Wood, I went to the Fort Leonard Wood EOD team in basic training, and you go put the bomb suit on and they smoke you and they make you do these like mental clarity tests and these dexterity tests with the gloves on and stuff. So that all goes well. I graduate basic training. I get orders saying, hey, you're cleared and ready to go. So they send you to, at the time it was Redstone Arsenal, just outside Huntsville, Alabama. And that was my next stop for kind of what's supposed to be like a 6 to 8 month post. But like I said, everybody that joins the military, they have to graduate their branch's EOD school. And then once you graduate that, then everybody has to go to NAV school EOD at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. So that's what was next for me. They sent me to Huntsville, Alabama, and that's where they started giving you kind of your first taste of freedom. Everything was super locked down in basic training. You don't have any autonomy. It's everything we say you do. There's no free thought for you. You just have to perform to the standards we set for you, and you don't get really any autonomy beyond that. So that was after, it was my first 4 months in the Army. They send you to Alabama and they're like, all right, here's a little bit of freedom and here's a harder school. So got on another bus to St. Louis, and they flew me out to Huntsville, and got on a bus from Huntsville Airport, and it was like a van, I think. They drove us in a van and got to post and did in processing in Alabama.
Were you surprised at the scenery in Alabama versus North Dakota?
Yeah. So I'd been through Missouri a couple of times, even, like before I joined the Army and stuff. So I was familiar with that. But like the red dirt thing in the South was something I didn't like understand. I was like, it's a gravel road. It's kind of brownish, I guess, from all these country songs. And then you get down there and it's like, wow, this is actually like super duper red clay, So like all these cliff faces that are washed away are literally exposing like red. And where I grew up in the Black Hills, it was like a very, it's all pine, right? So Alabama was similar, but it's a lot thicker. Like up in the hills, it's like kind of sparse forests where you can go run and have fun through the trees. Alabama is not like that. It is like thick and overgrown and super, we have like country redneck in South Dakota, and Alabama's definitely like hillbilly redneck. Like there's definitely a difference, and you didn't really know it until you got to go there and experience it.
Yeah. So, being from Montana, so we were neighbors, pretty close to neighbors.
Yeah.
But yeah, the same thing. And especially the farther east you went in Montana, the more sparse it became.
Right.
So yeah. And going into North Dakota was, pretty sparse too. But
the Black Hills are like the only elevation in the entirety of all of the Dakotas. I mean, there is like, I live in Kansas now, and people talk about flyover states and cornfields and stuff. And personally, I love it out here. I think it's beautiful. There's freedom, clean air. I love seeing the rolling hills of the Flint Hills. I think the Great Plains is probably one of the most underappreciated places on earth. But yeah, growing up in the Black Hills, it was like, I snowboarded and stuff in the winter. We had actual winter sports,
Yeah,
things like that. And I guess there's like Red Lodge is in Montana, so you kind of get
yep,
that.
it is.
Um, so yeah, it was a pretty unique experience being from the Dakotas and being in the only place where there's like elevation and pretty things,
Yeah,
so
exactly. And where we were from was kind of smack dab in the middle of Montana. So we kind of, could go either direction and, you know, flat and, kind of gray and dirt versus trees, all the other stuff. So you end up, and you get through EOD school. And what happens next for you?
yeah. So I do. I spent about 8 months in Alabama. Make it through Army EOD, no problem. I get my graduation certificate. And then I kind of, hang out in Alabama for like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, waiting for orders to come through so that big Army can send me down to Eglin Air Force Base and attend NAV school, EOD school. A buddy and I who had graduated together, he had his truck in Alabama, so we packed up all of our stuff in his truck, drove down to Eglin Air Force Base, which is just outside of like Destin, Niceville, kind of right there in that area. 30-45 minutes south of Pensacola.
Okay.
And yeah, it's up in the Panhandle. It's not way down south. Get on base, get to our unit, and this is where the world of change starts to happen for me. Is first of all, you're on an Air Force base, and doing this show, I know you're privy to all of the how good the Air Force has it compared to other branches, but it was immediately apparent. Where we went for in processing looked like a hotel desk, basically. Like we rolled in, we're like, hey, here's our orders. This is the building we were told to come to, like talking to a nice little like civilian lady. And she was like really sweet. And she's like, oh, yep, got you right here in the system, and gets us checked in and gives us room keys. And she's like, your guys' HQ is actually just a block south of here. So tomorrow morning, you're told to report here at this time and go ahead and move your stuff in and start getting unpacked and get ready for the morning. So we're like, oh, wow, this is crazy. I like getting checked into this post. Don't deal with any military personnel yet at this point, which is already a huge change, right? Like
Right.
I've been used to being received by NCOICs this whole time. So we get our room keys to our own individual rooms in what looks like a 3-story motel on the beach in Florida. And we're like, wow, we really maybe should have joined the Air Force. Like, this is wild. So we get moved in. Next morning comes around, well rested, go to HQ to check in, and basically they kind of let us know, hey, your guys' class is about to start in like 3 days. In the meantime, get moved in, start talking to people. This is like job mode now. We've been moved out of like, hey, you're a private, we have your whole life on lockdown. Even in Alabama, we had limited permissions to be able to do things. We had to file a pass for the weekends to be able to leave, stuff like that. This is wide open autonomy. This is, hey, you're a full-blown adult here. We expect you to be where you're supposed to be on time and things like that. So those kind of like my first taste of freedom ever in my whole life. Like I didn't have parents to report to. I didn't have NCOICs to report to. We were given a radius in Florida. It was like, hey, if you're going to go more than 100 miles away for an extended period, you need to be able to file, a leave request and things like that. But, I was allowed to buy a car. I could get married if I wanted to, whatever it was, like full blown big boy. So we'll get to this part of the story, but there was a little bit of radical opening for me as a human adult at that point.
You're starting to sow your oats.
Yeah, a little bit. So we, waited a couple of days, and we still report to formation in the morning and stuff like that. But after formation breaks, then it's up to you. Go get breakfast, go hang out, go work out, whatever it is you want to do. We finally get into class, and it was immediately apparent from there, without doing too much operational security issues here. There's like 5 stages of nav school at EOD. There's a classroom phase where it's a couple weeks of classwork and making sure you're even cut to be in this building and learn with these guys. After class phase, then you start getting into some advanced EOD stuff. They kind of break it down between, all right, you made it through class. Here, we're going to talk to you about explosives in general, like what we do on an everyday basis. You know, you have a basically 6-week class, 8-week class to go learn about demolition in general. What is demolition? How do we do it? Here are the different classifications. Here's the tools we use. And then beyond that, it really starts getting into EOD job work. Then you kind of start talking about ground ordnance and air ordnance and IEDs and nuclear threats and all these things. And those are all staged out across like what's supposed to be like a 9-month, kind of a 9-month school. I think I was in Florida for, well, I guess I don't want to jump too far ahead, but yeah, that's pretty much what happened was you get checked into Florida. And then from there it's, all right, let's see how serious this guy is about being a tech.
And so you're there for roughly 9 months, and you're kind of laid back as far as the facilities, right? Yeah. But yeah, I can see this. I really can picture this. And, you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. Got my own quarters. I've got my, I can go eat when I want, and so on and so forth. So you get through that, you graduate. Is it a graduation thing or?
No. So if you'll notice my little title under my name says geospatial analyst. That's what I ended up doing. So, basically I had gotten through, demo week. I'd gotten through ground ordnance, air ordnance I don't know if you've ever had a tech on your podcast before, but, air ordnance is probably the hardest part of nav school EOD. And a lot of that is just because of how complicated those ordnance systems are. It's really our job as, I shouldn't say it's your job as an EOD tech to be able to identify specifically what the ordnance is, what its fusing is, what kind of explosive capabilities it has. An ID has to be done before you can even approach the thing, right? So there was a test that I didn't make it through twice in a row. At Air Division. And I'm not a man that regrets, right? Like I'm very happy in life. I'm happy everything went the way it did. I love my family. I love where I'm at. I love what I'm doing. One of like 2 things in my whole life that I truly regret is never being able to get my crab. Like even to this day, I've talked to techs that are like, dude, I can get you back in. We can do it. I know you can do it. I was like, I'm happy in life now. I don't have to go. I don't have to go do that. But so I was in Florida for pretty close to 7-8 months when I rolled through that class twice. So I failed that test the second time. NCOIC goes, sorry, man, like we can't push you through. We'll send you back to HQ, see what kind of orders exist out there, see what you can do. So they gave me a couple days to kind of like wrap my head around the fact that I was leaving and that I wasn't going to make it through school. So I went to HQ and they were kind of like, hey, here's what the Army's got open, dude. Like here, you tested really well. We want you to keep your clearance. So here's these jobs that allow those kind of things. And I was offered a role to go to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for the 35 Golf geospatial analyst class. So it's an intel job, right? Like I'm rolling away from all these ordnance guys who are kind of the rootin' tootin' cowboy type, pretty rough dudes to classroom full of nerds, which like, and I'll use that openly because like I'm a nerd now. I was a nerd in high school too. Like, I was in choir and music and I love playing video games. And so it worked out. So I picked that job. Ironically, the kid that I left Alabama with to go to Florida with rolled out in the same class a week after me and wanted to take the same job. So the same dude I went from Alabama to Florida with, we got back in that truck and drove on I-10 for like 22 hours. Like I cannot tell you how long it is from Eglin Forest Base to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. It's just like 10 miles north of the Arizona border, like an hour and a half south of Tucson. So we were in that truck forever. Rolled all the way out to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And then it was kind of since we had already graduated an Army school,
Mm-hmm.
they called us to reclass MOS, which usually is reserved for people who have been in the service for like already 4 to 6, 8 years who are getting a new job. So our treatment even at that school was a little bit different than somebody who just left basic training to go to that school for the first time, because we had already graduated with an MOS. We were already assigned an MOS in the Army. So it was halfway between like full-blown autonomy and, hey, this is your first school. You just got out of basic training. We're going to treat you like a brand new kid. At this point, I'd been in the Army for like close to a year and a half. You know what I mean? So we rolled out to Arizona, got checked in for class. And ironically, again, this is a long school, like most of these military schools are, like 6 to 8 weeks in total. So when you've been in the Army for like almost a year and a half and you're still in training, it's kind of a unique experience too. But yeah, we got out to Arizona, got checked into Fort Huachuca, and told like, hey, here's what we're doing here. I didn't really know exactly what it was, but I knew it was intel. I knew I got to keep my clearance, and I knew it had something to do with satellites. So I was like, all right, cool. Like that sounds kind of cool. So we get there and kind of the same thing going to Florida. We have to hang out for a couple days till orders get logged all the way through and they find a class opening for us. So me and my buddy start class like a week after we get to Arizona. And it's immediately apparently different. Like there's a lot less standard around the physical fitness and things like that. Now it's a lot of, we're going to pull at your head and see how much we can cram into you for a 9-month school. So that's what we did, and that's where it started.
Wow. So when you're there, was there a favorite part, something that you really enjoyed over others that you can talk about?
Yeah. So Intel school is really cool. You do all of this work in a skiff, right? So you pretty much get stripped down to bare bones. You really can't take anything in there with you outside of like, I mean, there's really not a lot they'll allow you to take into a secured containment facility like that. So basically every morning before class, you go get some chow, do some PT, and then you go stand in line so that you can hit the security check-in. Building's really locked down. So my favorite part about that entire school was less about like how the technology works, I didn't really care about like how the hardware or the software worked. A lot of it was the work that had to be done. There was a lot of what you do in that school is you identify specific things in specific areas from any aerial platform, right? Like, so U2 cameras, drone cameras that are mounted on Blackhawks, obviously satellite imagery. You kind of take all the visual information in you can, and then do a ton of identification. So the idea of this is like, hey, we need general reconnaissance for this area, or we need to know specifically about this person and these things. So we could be tasked to work with human intelligence and follow a specific person for a long time, or just kind of any of the general intel that's required leading up to boots on the ground mission is what a lot of this is for. And there was a lot of cool things that we had to do there. But my favorite thing out of all that was the briefings, right? You spent a long time doing this big intelligence package, and then you got to go, it's sort of Hollywood, but it's not quite as Hollywood, right? But you got to build this big intelligence package and then go stand up in front of a lot of leadership and say like, hey, this area, this amount of time, here's all the things we've noticed about it. We do a ton of work on analyzing what types of vehicles, height of wall, ingress and egress situations, to be able to put these packages together and then brief on them. Briefing the package was without a doubt one of my favorite things to do. You really got to be put in front of leadership to show like, hey, here's what I did. Here's what my team did, whatever it was. That's really where the meat hits the grinders right there.
Yeah.
And we were proud of that. Like there's always the oxymoron quote of like, military and intelligence and the same thing, you know, but I work with some insanely smart people. I mean, some people even to this day that I revere, and I know that they're out there doing some very, very cool stuff. Um, so that was a lot of fun to be able to be in the same room as those guys in front of that big screen saying like, hey, here's all this work we did. And here are the things that we know for sure are going to help save lives when boots hit the ground here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you've gone from, Florida into Alabama into Arizona. Um, what are you thinking about in Arizona? Like, what is it? How different is Arizona from the rest of the places that you have seen thus far?
Significantly. It's definitely a whole shift in the worldview. My grandparents are snowbirds. They winter in Surprise, Arizona. And through high school, we would come down and visit for like Christmas and stuff like that. And I had always enjoyed it. You know, the bone dry, non-arid. I loved it. You know, and I always thought like I could see myself living in an area like that. If you go 2 hours south of there, it's literally a different world. The desert's a different kind of desert. Like, the people are different. There's constant like roving, border patrol agents all the time around. And the fun is different too, right? Which helped me a lot being a newly free young man. Sierra Vista is the town kind of that Fort Huachuca is next to, right? And there's not a lot to like do there. There's a mall, so I played a lot of video games while I was there. And really about the only thing like kind of neat to the area was Tombstone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, growing up as an ag kid, like Tombstone was it still is one of my favorite movies, So being able to go see Tombstone, see the Birdcage Theater, go check out OK Corral, all those things, was really cool. And it was definitely a better environment so that you're not surrounded by, Panama City Beach is the United States is like #1 spring break spot. And it's a season down there, right? Like not every college hits spring break at the same time. It's like a 12-week thing long college. It's not a 2-week thing from whatever state you're in. So that was significantly different, right? And it was good. It was good for me to be able to stay focused on studies and really grow up a little bit. Go check out some history. And when you do go see family, you're going to see your grandma and grandpa 2 hours north of there. You know what I mean? So it was definitely not a place where I think I would go live and retire to, but it was an awesome place to be able to like grow up and start to understand the world a little bit and become more mature. That's
wonderful. So you graduate from there.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens next for you?
Yeah. So back in basic training, at in processing, the admin kind of S2, S4 portion of that is what's your wish list? Where do you want to go when you graduate school? And everyone wants to be like exotic, they're like, I want to go to Germany. I want to go to Korea, like all these things. I have family here, and I kind of knew that going in, like, I think I would want to be close to family. So my #1 pick was Fort Riley, Kansas. And that's like the last request for anybody in the Army. So having that #1 on my list was basically a shoe-in. And that's exactly what happened when I left Huachuca. When I got orders, it was for DHHB at Fort Riley, Kansas. So I was like, all right, we're going to Kansas, baby. So I'm in the Army for like a scratch over 2 years. By the time I graduate geospatial, get orders a week later to go to Fort Riley, Kansas. And they put me on an airplane with all my stuff. And I land at Manhattan Regional Airport. And I land on a Friday night. So I have the whole weekend before I need to go check in Monday morning. My mom and dad had already moved back down to, my mom's from outside here. So while I was in the Army, they had moved from South Dakota back down here. So my mom and dad picked me up from the airplane. It was awesome. It was like the first time I had seen them since like Thanksgiving, like a year and a half before that. We got a break. So it was really nice to just be able to land, be picked up by people I'm super comfortable with, and then get to hang out for the weekend and digress a little bit.
Right.
And they didn't get to go to that graduation all the way down in Arizona. So it was nice just to be able to kind of catch them up and be proud and show them what I had accomplished and hang out for the weekend before I went and check in Monday morning. And that's what happened. I went and check in Monday morning, get assigned to division headquarters and headquarters battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas. And there was kind of like a mix up. When I got checked in, they had put me in these barracks that I was going to be staying at, you know? And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, we have to shift you. We didn't do our math right when we had incoming specialists. So I got reassigned to 1st Brigade Special Troops Battalion. BSTB is what it was called. And it was kind of cool. It's kind of like our whole company was themed after the Avengers. And it's the reason they did that is BSTB, Battalion Special Troops Brigade, or Brigade Special Troops Battalion, is it's a bit of a misnomer. They bring in a ton of different MOSs for specialty teams in that entire battalion. So I got to work with people that were, you know, all sorts. I got to work with imagery and signal and human intelligence, as well as engineers. You know, it was literally a special troops battalion. And when I had gotten transferred over, they were a rear detachment at the time. So they had troops in Iraq for 8 months already at that point. And they were getting ready to bring everybody back in 60 days. So I was pretty eager to hit the button, right? I was like, I don't care if it's 2 months. Like, I'm really excited about that. That's why I'm here. And that's why I started this entire process. They're like, no, hang tight. You know, they're all coming back in 2 months. I think we'll just have you go to the skiff here and work for a couple months. And that's what I did. I got to go work at our local skiff here in Fort Riley and do that until those guys got back from deployment.
And then what happened when they came back? Anything?
Yeah, so there's an entire wind down and drawdown. I'm positive you've heard those stories from guys that actually come back, and you know how much leave they get, and kind of the whole unit really just kind of hits the chill button for, you know, a good 3 to 6 months, kind of depending on the nature of the deployment and things like that. And really, you know, the friends that I had made in that first couple of months, we all knew was kind of going to be shaken up pretty quick, because there was an entire unit coming back that we were a part of.
Yeah.
And there's also kind of a respect hierarchy there as well. It was always my goal to be able to do that. And when then they came back and had those experiences and stories and very tight camaraderie and friendships from being deployed together, it's really difficult to align with them, just because, you know, I mean, you just spent like 10 months outside of the country with dudes doing things that are difficult. So it was a very long integration process into the unit for me specifically. It took, you know, a good, probably 4 to 6 months to be able to really kind of ingrain myself and find some friendships and do some things with those guys. And then, you know, by the time this unit has wound down and we're getting back to our everyday lives and getting ready for what could be coming down the pipe in the next, you know, year and a half, is basically where we were kind of planning for. That was going to be, you know, a good 10 months beyond my initial enlistment window, which was 4 years. I enlisted for 4 years. So during my time at Rear D, when my unit came back, there wasn't any reason for us to be going to the skiff for like a good 6 months, right? Like, our unit wasn't downrange. We weren't supporting any other units. So we were basically just kind of hurry up and wait, chill out, eat, work out. All this work and training I did to come into the military was, you know, going to be useless for the next year and a half, because we weren't doing anything. And so we kind of get assigned to like different jobs and roles for the post. while we're there. So that's what we did. I did gate guard, like literally control access points for the installation of Fort Riley for 6 months. I did like some commander's courses and a lot of schooling beyond that. And it didn't take long to hit that 4-year button at that point. It was like 2.5 years of training and a year and a half of kind of whatever the Army needed me to do, which personally at the time I found frustrating, right? Like I really wanted to be able to do more. I had spent a lot of time to practice these skills and exercise these skills. And essentially I graduate school and do it for like 60 days. And then I went and stood at a gate and did some online schooling. So when it came time to re-enlist, I was like, I appreciate the opportunity. I won't get to do my job for a while, and I don't have enough brass here to be able to move somewhere where I can do my job for a couple more years. And I didn't have the patience. So that was my entire Army career right there. That was it. But I got to use those skills, the clearance and everything like that, getting out to get into software and technology and end up where I'm working now, which is.
And that was my next question for you. Did they give you any classes or resources for transitioning back into civilian life?
A saying pops into my head right when you say that, and that's good enough for government work. And it wasn't in-depth stuff, right? Transitioning, and I'm sure you've heard this before from a lot of other service members, transitioning from the military into civilian life is difficult.
Yeah.
Especially for people that had to go downrange and do tough things. It's an even harder transition there. But there really aren't a lot of, well, first of all, a lot of resources, let alone a lot of really good resources, which is what's needed. So of course there's some financial briefings. There's some, hey, this is what you did while you were in. Here are some companies you could look into, right? But it was all pretty surface level. It was basically like, here's a pamphlet, don't go into debt. Here's a pamphlet, these guys hire all the time. And it's like Lockheed and Boeing. And you're like, okay, well, I knew they existed, so thank you. But there wasn't a lot of good resources to get you transitioned out. It takes a really high level of time and service to start establishing those connections outside of the military, to be working in the complex or somewhere else in the industry. So I wouldn't say it was good from my personal experience.
So how did your MOS as geospatial analyst transfer into the civilian world?
So I had a lot of familiarity with software and software operation. I noted earlier that wasn't my favorite part, and like that's not what I was like trying to do, but I knew it would apply. And that's what I leaned on, was my leadership skills and the amount of software and software adaptability that I had done while I was in would translate outside. And that's what I did. I was a support engineer for a huge government CMS for like 4 years after that. And that was radically different. And I missed shooting guns. I missed hanging out with like the people that did, harder things. I transitioned out of the military into a software company where not a lot of those guys were, I played D&D on the weekends, which I didn't do when I was in the Army. So, it was nice though. It was a good slowdown. And like I said, I got out at Fort Riley where my mom and dad, my grandma and grandpa, everybody had already lived here. So I had a good support system getting out here, which a lot of people aren't lucky enough for. And a lot of people, when they get out, they get shipped back to wherever MEPS they initially in process to, so a lot of people get shipped back to their state where they haven't been in years, and, hopefully their support system's there in place for them. But I got lucky enough to just say, hey, I have a support system here. You don't need to put me on a plane and fly me back to South Dakota. My whole family's down here. So got out here and started doing software.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So before we get too far, for those of you out in the chats, if you have any questions for Jake, go ahead and put those in the chats for me now, and we'll have him get those answered. But while we wait for those, Jake, what resources are you aware of for veterans in your area?
So what I would recommend to anyone who's needing some help, any type of help at all, you can start at, big ones. It depends on the kind of help you need. But the first thing that I would do is hop on Instagram and look for vets that are talking about an issue you're dealing with. That's like
Okay.
where I found my community. That's where I found the people, for what I'm doing now. That was through social media. Uh, that's the one thing you got to do is if you need help, you have to be able to reach outside of yourself and say, first of all, I need help with whatever it is. And if you can recognize that, then having the gumption to do it is the biggest first step it's going to take. I would recommend getting on social media and finding any group, even if it's at the top, it's this big national thing, a couple that I've grown to really love and appreciate their missions. Operation Barbecue Relief, those guys are constantly looking for vets to go help. What they do is they drag these really cool like meat wagons and trailers and food wagons to places that need help from like national disasters, or they're going to do big events to be able to help veterans with other organizations like Project 22 a Day, people like that. So that's a mission I really appreciate. And then even locally here, the Resolute Resiliency Ranch, their whole thing is just getting former service members, former law enforcement, anybody who needs a support system. You go hang out with those guys for like a weekend. You go camp. You go stay in these bunks that remind you of open bay barracks, and you have a campfire every night where you get to just hang out and talk. It doesn't have to be this like assigned therapist that specializes in a specific thing. It's what you need is, you need your brotherhood back. You need your brothers and sisters to be able to lean on and say like, hey, dude, I was there too, bro. And here's what helped me. Where's your family? Do you have family? I'll be your buddy. Um, that's the biggest thing that I've seen is hop on social media and just start looking for support groups because they exist. There's no judgment there, and their whole purpose is to be able to hang out with you and help and listen to you.
Yeah, that's great. So where are you at today in your life?
Yeah, so I am in a tiny town called Wamego, Kansas. It's just like 15 miles straight east of Manhattan, which is the big city next to Fort Riley. Hanging out with my family. It's Sunday. The Chiefs are on, and I've got my wife and my little girl and my sister, who's, my wife and my sister are both pregnant right now. Her husband's here. My mom and dad are here. We're all just kind of hanging out, being a family.
Congratulations. Looks like the family is just growing.
We're excited. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It has been an absolute pleasure having you come on tonight. And because I met you in Knoxville.
Yep. Down
And
at Goals. Yeah.
yes, and that was through our mutual friend, Angry Sarge, who shout out to him. I know he was in the chats earlier. So
He's a solid guy.
100%.
Probably like one of the most kind of just authentic dudes. The irony of his obfuscation with his mask and his whole persona and his whole following is huge, because that's one of the coolest dudes I've got to meet in the industry and hang out with. And his son's awesome. His son's a lot of fun to hang out with too. So yeah, when he pulled you up to the booth, I was just like, oh yeah, that sounds like a really cool experience. I think it'd be fun to talk to Carolee about, my time in. And I think what you're doing here is awesome. Just getting stories out there and, giving people a general idea of how this happens and bringing awareness to anybody that needs help or just wants to hear the stories, I think is very cool.
Well, thank you. I think, a lot of times people don't talk enough about their experiences, and sometimes just getting it out makes a difference and, helps them sleep at least a night or two in, relative peace. Um, I know I do that with my children all the time. Get it out. I don't care. Just get it out. And I'm going to hound you
Just
until
say
you get it out because then you'll feel better. It's when you keep everything inside that it festers,
yeah.
and that's when you have a lot of problems. So, um, I want to thank you again. Like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm not seeing any other questions, but I do have a couple comments. So Jason has said, I agree with you on Sarge. What a great man. And Misty, Mrs. Wayne. Sarge probably thought I was crazy at first when I first saw him because of his Oni mask.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's been a guest on my show. He's been a great supporter of this channel, and we absolutely love him here. So, but if you want to hang tight for me,
Sure.
and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So for everybody out there watching, so next Sunday, we are going to have a family coming in. So I won't be having a show next Sunday. I'm super excited to see my family. Haven't seen them this particular set for several years. So it'll only be a day thing. So, but after that, I do believe I have, let's see. So on the 12th of October, I have James Blackwell, Army veteran, and he was the one we talked about earlier. I showed at the beginning of the show, who has sent me his second book, Gunners, and he's going to be back on the channel to talk about this. So be sure to log in on the 12th of October. So I want to again thank everybody for showing up tonight and giving some love to Jake. Jake, thank you, and hang tight for me. And we will see you all again in October. Y'all have a nice week. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I just saw Angry Sarge was posting to Misty. I was confused. I'm not used to people knowing who I am.
Give yourself some credit, my man.
That's right. Misty, thanks so much. Say hello to Ron for us. All right, y'all. Have a great one.